Welcome to the Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano. Airing live on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Thursday night segment of The Outer Realm. We're broadcasting live on the International Public Radio via United Public Radio Network 105.3 FM from the beautiful city of New Orleans. And we are fully sponsored by the amazing folks over at Folgers Coffee and, of course, Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, aka Justin Snicker, for his contribution of our intro and our outro. So thank you. You'll notice tonight I am minus Amelia Pisano. Amelia got her booster today, so she's a little bit under the weather, so we thought we would just let her have some time to recover a little. So let's just send her out some well wishes, hugs, and the whole 9 yards. And we will, I'm hoping that she'll be listening in, and maybe if she's feeling up to it, she'll get into chat. Tonight we do welcome the return of our really dear friends, Utu Witchdoctor and Cat Thagard. Utu's been on several times, and Cat, this will be her second time. So it's just kind of like hanging with friends tonight, which is going to be awesome. We're going to be discussing kind of like weird tales, folklore, and cryptids in the Niagara Falls area. We kind of left off that way the last time they were on the show, and it was really getting interesting. And then, of course, the clock struck 11, and that was it for us. So boo on that. You'll notice, of course, we are streaming on our usual 8 platforms, which is for Facebook. We've got UFO Paranormal. We've got The Outer Realm, of course, Canada's Most Haunted, of course, Joe Montaldo, UFO Undercover. Then we have on YouTube, we've got International Public Radio, UFO Paranormal, and UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials. So feel free to go to any of those pages, subscribe, like us all up, so you can sort of keep tabs on what's going on and all the great shows that are coming on a daily basis. So hello, I'm in chat. So hey, Zach Man. Hey, Tamara. Hello, Susan. Hello, Wayne. Hello, Doreen. And yeah, poor Bubbles. I know we feel really bad. I don't like it. Robin. Hey, Robin. So it's sort of a big boo. And I know I was speaking with her a little bit earlier, and she just needs to get some sleep and get some TLC. So with that being said, we're going to be solo, but it's going to be a whole lot of fun. Cat and Utu are just really versed with some great stories. Hi, Stephanie. So, of course, with a more laid-back show, we're also able to interact a little more easily with you all in chat. Hey, Utu. So I'm going to actually send you guys a link, Utu and Cat. Here we go. Coming at you right now. We'll be able to bring you on. Let's go. Okay, yeah, all right. Let's say there it is, just spinning, and the wheel just keeps spinning. So I'm just waiting for the bots to appear in chat for YouTube because they're like pretty prevalent right now. So we'll have to keep an eye on those and wait for the guests to come in. So hey, Kaz. So if you guys have questions, about folklore or cryptids, or maybe you've had experiences or stories to share, in the Niagara Falls area, both sides of the border, by the way. So it doesn't have to just be Canada. It can be in the U.S. as well. Feel free to put that up in chat, and we'll highlight it up here on the screen, and everybody will be able to comment on that. And Marianne, so excited to listen to Cat and Utu, wonderful people. They are. I'm really proud to call them both friends. I love to see them. Hasn't been as much since a pandemic, but we also used to have a radio station studio right in the heart of Queen Street. So we were able to, I think our very first interview with Utu was in studio, which was really awesome. And Cat was outside the window just paparazziing him. So that was pretty funny. But anyway, so it was a lot of fun. These are times where we just don't get to see everybody all the time. Beast of Port Robinson Road. Yeah, it's a freaky story. It's like, yeah, it is a dogman story for sure. You know, we'll definitely talk about that. And Wayne, I think you got more inside info than a lot of people. I can relay the stuff that you told me from the person that you've spoken with, but it is a freaking bloody heck freaky story. It is a dogman, something else. I don't know. We'll have to wait. So let's just are you guys coming on, Cat and Utu? I know you're listening. So maybe they're trying to get organized. It is a link. There we are. Perfect. Here we go. And it's only one computer. It makes it so much easier.
I'm so short. Sorry, I was like at the bottom.
I'm so short. Yeah. Hello, guys. Hello. Mary Ann. Here you go. Here's one of your faithful. Mary Ann. So excited to listen to you guys. So if you're close enough, you'll be able to see. I'll put the comments up. If not, I will just read them off. Can you see? You can. You can't see. Poor Cat. I'll just charm them off. Don't worry. So how are you guys?
Good. We were just saying, you're around the corner. We should have just came to your mystery.
We should have just came to the house. I know. We could actually do that sometime. Only we'd be huddled around. Thank God it's a big screen because we'd all be right to stay within the cameras. But it would be a lot of fun. So
it'd be worth it to see the beauty of that room.
Oh, yeah. It's a bit congested right now because normally this is what we call the medieval room, and it's really wide open. But because my office isn't ready, you know, the whole restoration thing, I have a cubby. It looks great, but I'm literally in the spot about this big. But the sound is great because the walls are like 3 feet thick, right? So if you remember the first time you came and did an interview with us, we were at the studio and it sounded a little bit like we were in a tin can, right? So
yep.
This is nice. This is just really, everything's sort of, anyway, Wayne says, hey, you two lovely people. Yeah. Yeah, he's in the other room listening to his computer. So
well, yell loud enough, you'll hear us. Hey, wait.
I know. Just stick him outside in the tower. He'll just wave. So we were really on a good groove when we finished off the last segment with a lot of we were getting into some pretty weird tales about stuff going on in the area. Maybe we can recap a little bit with, you know, some of the folklore for people who are just tuning in, who maybe missed the last show, and naughty people who didn't go listen to the archives. But, you know, maybe we can start with that and then just build up to some really, you know, we were going to touch on folklore, cryptids, and Wayne mentioned the beast of Port Robinson Beast. Have you guys heard of the Port Robinson Beast?
I don't know that one, but I know Port Robinson. So that'd be kind of cool to hear.
Yes, you do. Well, then I will fill you guys in on that one because we actually have some inside intel with that, which is kind of cool. But I know we were starting, Utu was just like on a roll with some pretty interesting cryptids and folklore and stuff. So we're like, oh, you know, clock struck 11. We're like, okay, let's do this again. So
yeah, he's got some stories.
Yeah, so I think it's a good place to start. Hey, Michael. So where do you guys want to start? Maybe why don't we start with what you've been up to, and then let's just get into some cool tales. I'll leave it to you guys.
Currently, just working, teaching classes, and we just finished our big Krampus blitz for Yule and Christmas, which was awesome.
I loved it.
Yeah, it was great. It was absolutely spectacular. I should have done it longer because it was a big hit and everybody loved it. So
I know. Instead of Santa photos, there were Krampus photos. Why don't you let everybody know about the store and about what you guys do, just so they have an inkling going, what are you talking about?
Well, I run Cat and Monkey events. It's on Queen Street in Niagara Falls. And we have retail upstairs, which consists of tarot decks, jewelry, crystals, candles. It's kind of like a little mini botanica. Got all sorts of stuff up here. And then downstairs we have the classroom where Witchdoctor Utu teaches classes. I teach class. We do readings, sell a whole load of herbs, lots of stuff. So there's always something going on. Right now we're gearing up for our kind of Mardi Gras. We're doing our Mardi Gras window.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is great. I've shopped at your store a couple times, and I do. I love it. So
I love you though.
thank you. Taking the gifty up to the mother unit on the weekend too, so she'll get to see hers finally. I haven't been able to make it up there. Yes, so give you some good feedback there. So hey, Jamie. So okay, so where do you guys want to start? I mean, we can touch on some of the things we started with or ended off with last time, if you'd like, just to sort of warm people up. And it's always good to hear the stories again for those who weren't tuned in to be able to listen.
Well, for sure, what I remember last time was we were just getting on to all the sort of unique mysteries of the greater Niagara Peninsula.
Yes.
And so, I think it goes without saying that for most of us that are familiar with the energy here on the peninsula, and of course it's a very large piece of land. A peninsula is what it is. It's surrounded by water. So we have Lake Ontario to the north, we have Lake Erie to the south, and then the Niagara River connecting the two lakes on our far east. And so, but that river also separates us from the United States. So we have, the lakes are on both borders, and there's just this vortex of energy. So it starts with the idea there's just this constant swirl of energy that goes back to, again, I think if we dig down into a lot of the local indigenous lore, that's where some of the foundations are for some of the cryptids that what we call cryptids, right? So we're talking lake monsters or entities of the woods. So that it's always been that way here. It's been noted to be a place of power, a doorway, and so there's just so many unique, strange things that resonate here. And to me, the most interesting is the lake monster, or lake monsters. But my personal theory, so if anyone's wondering what we're talking about, is there are more in Lake Erie, especially on the our side of the coast. It's filled with, and all the way down into Ohio, they have sports teams named after the lake monster. They have golf courses here in Ontario named after that lake monster. It's got different names, but it goes back again to indigenous times of these water serpents, these large entities, orange serpents swimming in the lake. And there's also sightings in Lake Ontario of a water serpent, right?
Yes.
So to me, though, I think it's interesting that because of the mytho of Niagara Falls being the oldest myth, that there was a giant water serpent that lived in a cave behind Niagara Falls, that is considered the lair of this particular entity. Right. So it makes sense that the two lakes on either side of its lair would be its quote unquote swimming poles. I know we're getting to crazy stuff already, but
it is, because it makes you think, how does it get back up the falls?
Well, because that's what you got to ask. Is it a physical? Is it a physical? Because most people that see it and call it the lake monsters, there's people that have written books about the Great Lakes lake monsters, but they don't really ever touch too much on the indigenous lore. So
which we should.
Yeah, and so because it offers a really interesting analysis of what are we talking about? Are we talking about a living entity? Probably not. Or is it something other, that lives in other dimensions? Is it a signature? Why is it that we see in our modern colonial times of people living here something that resembles a lake monster, a dragon coming out of the water, swimming around? And yet, why is it at one point not that far back that this was actually literally a type of an entity that was deified by Native Americans and First Nations people? So somewhere these two worlds kind of need to connect.
It's going to get a lot better, because I'm just waiting for you to get into all that. Then we're going to twist it up a bit, because you and I were on a roll the last time. So why don't we explain the indigenous part of it and the maiden, where the Maid of the Mist came from? The whole,
So I'm gonna share, what I have come to learn to be, factual for the most part. Okay. And that is that one thing about, now for those of us who live around here, and I'm sure you know this too, one of the things about the Niagara Peninsula is that just after the Ice Age, people, the original inhabitants here, they settled here a long time ago, and they stayed in one place.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas most of the tribes were very nomadic, they were moving around a lot.
Right.
And there was always an encampment on the Niagara Peninsula, and that's just because of the unique climate and when the ice age, when the glaciers receded, it left a lot of fertile ground, unique trees, and before nuts started to grow and fruit. So it became a place of an ancient, constant inhabitants.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do know, because if we cross the border over into Lewiston and see the burial mound there, that those are the same people that are the Haudenosaunee that are connected to the ones who built the serpent mounds in Ohio. So the mound builders are from southern Ohio. Their nation stretched all the way up here and actually into part of Peterborough. And so they were the most ancient people who constantly lived here. And they had a very specific religious philosophy, and they did revere ancient primordial serpents, giant serpents. This is not uncommon for any people of that era of planet Earth around the world. The serpent takes place, holds a very unique position. So this was something that was revered. Obviously, we know that Niagara Falls was created when one of the Great Lakes burst from the different altitudes and it started to pour in. But at some point, the original inhabitants attributed that power to a giant horned serpent. They gave it a name. One of the names is called Gassiandiathea. It's very I know there's a lot of these names are very hard to pronounce, but they revered that. They revered it as a primal being that, while not exactly friendly to humans, would help humans and was able to measure a person, just like any wild creature that you could sort of interconnect with, but it was obviously a very large creature. And this was something that was revered, placated, acknowledged for thousands of years.
Yes.
Now, at some point, when that sort of philosophy ceased to exist, meaning that the Iroquois nation, the Iroquois Confederacy, began to subjugate all of the tribes from southern Ohio right here into Ontario and western New York. That's why in history books are called the Romans of the Native Americans, because they brought a structure, a trade, safety for trade, and they brought a new religious ideology, which was now that ancient serpents were no longer revered. They were considered to be outcast. They were considered to be evil entities. And now all the way from Ohio, right up here into western New York and to southern Ontario, their mythos still exists to this day, that their sky god hero slayed a giant horned serpent, killed it, and freed a human maiden that was his consort. So there's a lot of allegory and symbology there of dragons being slayed, again, around the world for most places except for Asia.
Right.
And so now but that's the thing is that the Seneca Nation never stopped revering that serpent. And their stories right up till 1931, Jesse Cornplanter's amazing book, he not only did the art, but he told the stories. He's one of the last great storytellers of Seneca Nation that was able to, keep all of the ancient myths very intact. And in that book, he explains very in detail how that serpent still exists, was just banished by magic, banished by oblivion, but still existed, still helped humans if they were worthy, and that the serpent did fear thunder. The thunderers always battled the serpents, and that's what's implanted now. And at some point, when there was a plague, the original myth was that a female, whether by choice or was forced, was offered a sacrifice over the falls to the serpent, and the plague was alleviated, and so that's who the original Maid of the Mist is. Now, when the Iroquois came, they put their version of it, which was that it was the thunderers. Now, the human thunderers were the big giant god men were living under the cave. They killed the serpent, and they're the ones who accepted her as their consort. But either way, we do still have this ancient dragon power here in Niagara that still manifests. That one Native American tribe still on the other side of the border recognize it, revere it. I've spoken to their elders. A lot of the Native elders in our general area or farther, I encounter them a lot in my travels. I talk a great deal about this because my band, the Drag Ritual Drummers, is completely intertwined in that mythology. It's a way to recognize the power of this region.
Right.
And so, it's there. And so even the most, tourist part of this region, where they see the Maid of the Mist, who now is, after she was offered to the sacrifice, she became the consort of the serpent, the thunderers, and now she emanates in the mist herself. And so the mist in and of itself now, when people come here, they attribute, it's negative ions. That's the energy from that giant waterfall that can, metaphysically transform you. She can manifest in the mist and, bless people with their love. People come here for their honeymoons. They come here for their,
it's true.
And
honeymoon capital of the world, man.
Honeymoon
Right?
capital of the world.
It's true.
And so it's kind of interesting that one of our main, parts, which is very tacky, touristly, preyed upon for sure. But there's no denying that is part of that mythology of this region, even though that story has been changed many times. But what I just explained was the most intact one, honoring each aspect of what the oldest part of it to the newest. And so any way you slice it, there's a giant serpentine energy here that manifests somehow in spirit and in the physical.
Yeah, and we also have to bear in mind, and that's correct. Tamara says there were no borders. So this was all very much probably one area when you go going way back, separated by the river. But I mean, probably dealing with a lot of the same, the same communities, the same tribes. Now, of course, everything is a little bit more divided. But when we talk about serpents, I think to myself, let's just look at South America. Let's just go to Peru. Let's look at the Mayans. Let's look at the Incans. Let's face it. I mean, serpents were everywhere. Ancient Sumerian texts show all kinds of serpent worship. Dragon lore. All of this is quite common, going back thousands of years ago. So why would it be any different here? I'm not surprised that our Indigenous people would also have their own stories. I think they were more in tune with interdimensional and dimensional beings than most people were, because they very much honor the planet and the water and the sky gods, as they say. Like they're more in touch, and I can say that because I have it in my background. So I definitely have Indigenous origins in my family, so it's always very interesting to hear the different tales. But it makes you. Oh, did you lose me? Yeah, right. Can you guys hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we're just having a little bit of an audio issue.
Oh.
Hold on.
Okay.
It is down. But I don't know that it'll completely go away.
Are you okay now?
No, we're gonna have to mute it. Or
I can hear you. We can hear you.
Are you getting a feedback, or is there a delay?
yeah, we're getting some kind of.
You sometimes will get feedback if you don't use earbuds, unfortunately.
Let me turn yours. Oh, say something, Michelle.
Testing. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Yes. No.
Can she hear me now?
I
Can you hear us okay?
Yeah.
You can hear us? Okay, so we're good.
We're good? Okay.
Oh.
We good?
Maybe it's because yours is on. I don't know.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Oh, we're much better now.
Okay.
I don't know what happened there.
Okay. Well, it happens. It's the area in which we live.
Geez,
you were talking about the serpent.
I know.
Strange phenomena.
I was just saying, when we talked about, Peru and different communities or civilizations all over the world have had serpent lore, dragon lore, and the indigenous being so closely connected to everything, literally would have a better understanding and appreciation of all these things. I think the ancient people knew how to communicate and revere many of these beings, and they emulated them. I mean, you see it in the monuments around the world. You see it in their actions, how many times they would, let's just use headbanding for an example. When you're dealing with, sky gods, what are the gods? Who did they revere as the gods? and the ancient Sumerians, they came for the gold. And the Egyptians went on to basically say, no, it was about the gold. Maybe they didn't realize why the gold was important, but they knew it was important to the gods, the people they emulated. So that's sort of the same all over the place. And then I think as times changed, where did it happen? When did it change? The church, maybe different beliefs, they amalgamated everything. When did we stop having an appreciation for these beings that our ancient people used to revere? Now we fear them, we dislike them. When did that change?
Well, the funny thing is if we look at our ancient history, that for the most part, it's Asia to this day. Asia and Indonesia have never stopped revering the dragon.
Right.
To some degree, Central America, those people there that are still connecting to their, ancestral, ancient Mayan, Aztec, the different nations there. There's still some remnants of the ancient giant plumed serpent there. But for the most part, Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, and here in North America, it seems to be around about the same, well, a little later here, but, for certain, it's around about the same time when humans seem to stop fearing cataclysms, changes in Earth, changes in oceans, levels. There just seemed to be a point, if we look at our ancient history, there's a point where humans seemed to fear dramatic change in our environment. And so there was these primordial beings that seemed to manifest. And it looks like at some point humanity, like modern humanity, because I guess maybe there was other humans living before this particular incarnation, but modern humanity at some point seemed to it became more about, sky gods. It became more about war gods, essentially, pretty much everywhere. And those, now that's because the Egyptians have their own mythology of slaying a serpent, bringing order to chaos. The Sumerians and the Babylonians slay the Tiamat serpent and bring order to the chaos of the world. The Europeans do the same thing. Much of parts of Central Africa too, where these beings it becomes the same thing. They slay this, and here in North America, there just seems to be a point where ancient religions, ancient old gods were now put away in place of new ones. But dragons, being that they're elementals, and again, we go into now an even crazier level of conversation, but they are around the world. Yeah. They are around the world. And the other thing, because when a couple of years ago here at Cat Monkey, we did a dragon magic ceremony ritual with a bunch of fossils that were given to us for the night to use them. These beautiful pieces. These were incredible fossils. And that whole aspect of dinosaurs, how can we ignore that we have fossils of giant creatures that look very similar to dragons? So are dragons a far memory of those entities? Is there a point in history that humans did interact with these creatures more? We just haven't been able to place that. People that study these things say that's impossible, but we're always finding out new things about timelines, or where we're just discovering these fossils a long time ago, and then just piecing it together that these creatures once existed. But it's very odd that we did have dinosaurs rule this world for far longer than humans did. And so our dragons, essentially spiritual force or the consciousness of these creatures, were there's ones living longer than we expect. Don't really know, but there's a bridge you can't ignore that connects the dinosaurs to the dragons, and that they represent the most ancient of religion, the most ancient of nature reference. And so at some point, humans, before Christianity, before Islam, slayed these, sort of put them away in most places except for Asia and Indonesia, where they still revere the power of the dragon.
I did an entire show on dragon sightings. Not this show, our other show, Joe and I, called The Gray Zone Uncensored, and the entire thing was old stories, documented stories of dragon sightings throughout different parts of the world. And there's one little town in Italy, I could get you the information. They claim to have a rib from a dragon in their church.
Wow.
So it's definitely, this thing would fly around, and that would just terrorize the towns, and they had to come together and slay this thing, right? So there's all kinds of stories about sightings. And when you work in the world of remote viewing, for example, because I work with several remote viewers doing different things, a lot of planetary things. And there's an elderly man who started out as a client of mine who works with the planet. And no, I've never met anyone like him. When I was approached to assist him, I was told that he wasn't from here. And when something happened to him, that the world would lose a gift. And I was just sort of, okay, well, aren't we all gifts, And then, and then I got to know him, and I realized I've never met anyone like him, and he's slowly losing his faculties. So he's, a lot is going on, but he has seen dragons often. And he says they are elementals. And he said, and you can see them. And I never really thought about that. I looked at them as elementals before, the gifted people could still see them through the veil or as they enter in and out of portals. There are actual sightings of them still going on. So are they just interdimensional and they're just slipping through a portal, flying around? The East Coast of the United States is a big one, coming up through Quebec, all the way down through Maine, all the way through the Adirondacks. A lot of sightings coming out of there. And I've had clients through the years who have also said, that when they meditate and they can tap in, one just out of the blue, she goes, I don't even know how this is possible, but I tapped in and I'm sure I saw a dragon. I'm just like, maybe. You don't want to start anything because you don't really know how they feel about it, really. I would be ecstatic because I love dragons. I've always have. But, so there's something that still resonates with these beings. And I mean, let's face it, if you want to get into religion, let's talk St. George, who slayed the dragon. Even the church incorporated its own story.
They seemed, according to history, if we look at it in a certain way, they seem to have had a last stand, so to speak, in most of continental Europe, including Britain.
Right.
It's much later that they were manifesting. Now, full disclosure here. So look, I mean, I'm a witch doctor. I'm initiated in a lot of strange things. I do a lot of strange things. So I don't think it should be that weird when people, are comfortable with me talking about spirits emanating out of cauldrons and pots and shrines in my home, places, effigies, things of this nature. So why should it be that much of a shock? Like I've just spent a lot of academic talk and talking about dragons. But yes, I have been in multiple scenarios with people where the presence of a dragon was there.
Yes.
And I think I know a few older witches that are older than me, who are sort of helping bring that movement into more of the mainstream that still live. They talk about this. They talk about in parts of Britain, in parts of various places.
Wales still has dragons.
And they can do it here, and they can do it here. And the Appalachian Mountains seem to have a great deal of that sort of energy there because they're very ancient mountains. So they possess a lot of ancient power. And therefore, there are ones. So one of the serpents of North America, which is called Uktena, is in the Appalachian region. And they all seem to have this sort of a gem on their forehead that shaman can enter, or they can take a scale. Those scales now can possess healing powers. So there's still to this day mysteries within the medicine people of certain nations in the southern United States where they go into a trance to enter the lair of the dragon to retrieve a piece of his scale or his gem in order to use that to heal humans. Even though that creature is considered to be very primal and doesn't really like humans, it still will let that medicine be passed on, or you can at least trick them enough to get them. So yeah, I've been present in in dragon manifestations over the years that are really intense, and it shouldn't be that big of a surprise because there's ley powers of the ley lines of this land that are
and power spots, vortices all over the world. Yes,
it is what it is. It's an ancient power. And again, we can prove that by dinosaur fossils. We can prove that from a little bit of what we know about paleontology. They are there. Every culture in the world has mythology possessing them. And to this day, even through the realm of cryptids, they seem to manifest in certain places.
Well, I mean, let's just use Loch Ness as an example. Let's just look at other maybe sea serpents that are popping up all over the place. Some are washing up on, on beaches and fishermen's nets. I mean, yet Loch Ness, they drag the entire loch. They're not finding anything. So interdimensional, multidimensional, because passing through a portal, having a little swim, going back out.
And it
You
also
know?
has a very ancient lore. It goes all the way back to
Yes.
the indigenous Pictish people living in Scotland. I was born in Scotland, so I have a
There
great
we
love
go.
for the Great Loch Ness. So we talked
Exactly.
about that earlier,
That's
the
right.
subject for sure. So the first sighting
Mhm.
of Loch Ness is from St. Columba, who brought Christianity to Scotland. And that's the first thing he did at the Loch Ness, was apparently to banish the giant serpent that lived in the water. So that far back, it's known to have been
Right.
someplace where, but then again, if anyone knows Scotland, they know each loch has its own water kelpie. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. Loch
Yes.
Ness is
Yes.
just the most popular.
No, I didn't get to see Loch Ness when I was there because, this most random thing, the street, the road getting to Loch Ness, which is never closed, was closed. I was just like, what? You mean I am not going to see this? Or like, there's an accident. Of course there is. It's like, thank you. There's
Well, of all the
travel. How many
places that
stinking
you have
hours in the
gotten to see,
plane?
all the places you've gotten to go to, all the unique spots in the world, yeah, you definitely have to get to Loch Ness
I just
because
have
it
to
is
go
that
back.
thing. It does have that energy. There's no mistaking it. It's
Oh,
something mystical you can't put your finger on. There's something going on.
yeah. Well, Aleister Crowley chose it as a mystical place, just, to be. And UFOs and the whole 9 yards. I do definitely think a lot of that is connected. I mean, here also really well known for sightings. Like, so why wouldn't you see all kinds of random things running around? There's portals everywhere.
Mm. So, what is the Port Robinson beast?
Wow.
Because Port Robinson, for those who don't know, that's a little part of Niagara Falls here.
Yes.
Where my good friend's lives right in there. So I'm curious now.
Now you need to know what's running around. I know. Well, there have been a lot of sightings. It's like a dog man sort of thing. Wolf being wolf person. I guess.
That's exactly what you're talking about now that you're
Right?
saying that. Yep.
Okay. So when they put in the Welland Canal, it split the community, right? It went right down the middle and there was no way across. You had to go way around. And in doing so, this, I guess, condensed his little area, and there started being a lot of sightings of this wolf-like being. Now, we touched on that a little bit last time. All kinds of different sightings of different wolf-type beings, like one right in front of the house here. Not like probably a few years ago, different because this guy sort of sticks to the Port Robinson area. Now, of course, Wayne, who's just Mr. just friendly and chatty. Everybody just sort of gravitates to him with things. And he's like bloody U-Haul of all places. And this girl working there goes, "Oh, I have a story," and pops out this story about when she and her friends, it was like, I guess it was like her bridal shower, before she got married, they decided we're going to go camping out there. And her and her one friend decided to take a walk down this road. And something started chasing after them. So they're like, oh my gosh, no, this is not a thing. So they jumped in their car and they just hightailed it out. And didn't the thing eventually find them? Because she woke up in the morning and there were large scratch and claw marks down the hood of the car. A little too close for comfort when it knows where you live. It's like,
a little freaky.
yeah. So, that was really, that was a pretty intense experience. But a lot of people have spotted this thing or heard this thing, but not
Now, is that
everybody.
one supposed to be like the all wolf upright one, or is it? But there's also one I've heard people talk about where it's half like wolf on the bottom, but man on the top, but that's why it can run so fast. And
Oh, crazy.
yeah,
Yeah, I've not heard that version of it, but nothing would freaking surprise me for this area.
right.
We had a sighting here. I didn't personally see it. It was either Wayne or it was a friend who was here with him at the time. There's two stories with this. Remember we talked a little bit about the stories of wolf people? I mean, they're called different things everywhere. I think I might have made mention of a story that I heard from two different women growing up near Elora, Guelph area, where they were basically told, one woman just grew up And she said, my grandmother always said, don't go. Their farm was on the edge, near the forest. She goes, don't go near the forest because that's where the wolf people live. When she was 6, she was like terrified. As she got to be, that those fearless teenage years, she decided, no, heck with it. I am just going to freaking go to that forest. So she takes a walk out through all these acres. And just as she starts to near the edge of the property, she saw 5 beings walking along the edge of the forest. And she goes, darn it, if they were not wolves, full wolves that walked upright, these tall, lanky things, right? So she just, hightailed it out of there. And that was the end of it. She never ventured out that way again. And I think the grandmother eventually, sold the property. Now, Burlington has many sightings of these same beings. I've had people say right around the corner from the house I had in Burlington, which is West Burlington, not far from the Royal Botanical Gardens. I was surrounded by ravines, so who the heck knew what was in there? I could hear all kinds of crazy things, aside from coyotes. But they would see beings crossing in and around what was called Plains Road near the Royal Botanical Gardens. And then there was another one that was crossing in and around. There was a sighting of 2 of them on Waterdown Road, if you're familiar with West Burlington at all. Yeah. Literally around the corner from the house. I'm like, damn, okay, everybody's in by a certain time. Don't want to be like kicking around any wolves. But, here, it wasn't an upright wolf. It seemed like this really tall, like really long, lanky legs, and it didn't run. It loped. When animals run, they don't, you know what I mean? This thing was almost perfectly, and it loped. And it had a really mangy looking thing. I'm thinking, was it like a half wolf or those coy wolves? They look kind of mangy. Maybe it had mange. But he goes, it was too tall. And it had really long snout, which coyotes and wolves don't have. I grew up around timber wolves, and I mean, they're large animals. I mean, they could look right over the hood of your truck. No problem. But they didn't have these really long snouts on them, almost like a Newfoundlander, just really. And the last story was just near the train station where you guys know, and it was a friend of ours at the time came up to the stop sign on the corner of, let's say, Zimmerman and Bridge. And he could see like this animal, same description. So he stops at the stop sign and he looks, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, is this tall, thin man just walked out. You didn't even see him like behind the stop sign. How do you not see something behind a stop sign? It's right. This big. And he just walked out and disappeared.
That's weird.
You think? Is the best you could give me? That's weird.
I spend a lot of time at my friend's rural property in Port Robinson, and there's definitely been a lot of coyote sightings. Yes. And lots of crazy sounds out there. But I can't wait to share that with them, the Port Robinson piece. I think we talked about this last time a little bit because during the subject. So you remember the great Rosemary Ellen Guiley? She passed away a few years ago, and so I knew her really well. I was lucky to see her a few times a year at certain events we were always at. And I was hanging out with her one night, and she had just written her book on dogmen and werewolves and whatever it was. And so I didn't know she was just about to release it. And so we were having this conversation, and I was saying to her, I was like, do you ever notice that, again, here in we'll just say in Ontario, like, there are legends in First Nations lore of wolf entities, shape-shifting of this nature. These are all, again, locked domain entities, sacred things, and so that's going to be there. But then ultimately, when certain people who colonized around the world, wherever they went, they brought certain mythologies with them. Eastern Europeans bring a lot of that sort of vampiric and energy, wherever the British go, and there's a lot of witches. But wherever the French went, there's werewolves, right?
It's true.
Where
French.
the French go, werewolves come with them. Yeah. And so she said to me, she goes, yes, I do know. I have recognized that. So, that exists even down in New Orleans. So, right. In the old swamp area, that the Cajuns, like who were
The
all
loup-garou.
French Canadians who were kicked out of the Maritimes of Canada and
Yes.
sent down to live in the Louisiana swamps. They brought with them this fear of these people who were wolf people.
Yes.
And they actually built these effigies in the swamp called Lac Lemont, which is an alligator man who would like ward off the werewolves.
Right.
So there's actually an effigy of one of those in the Voodoo Museum in New Orleans. And so this is something that fascinated me for years and years about that. Could never really find the proper source of that word. I brought it to a lot of French people, lots of folks. Lac Lemont, the way it was spelled, I wrote it down and always asked about it. And oddly enough, a wonderful Babalao who lives here in Ontario, who's French-born from France.
Yeah.
And he's been in a couple of our events here that Cat and I put on and work with them. Papa John Jerome. So I brought this up to him one time in conversation at an event. And he knew what that word was like that. He's like, oh, Lac Lemont, yeah. And he knew that it was actually something that goes back into French occult, that sort of almost a crocodile coming from Egypt, that they use this to ward off the werewolf. And he said that the werewolf in their culture, because he says, yeah, wherever the French go, there's this. It's true. And he has a strong accent. And mentioned that, this is like it's almost like a psychic vampire. It's a person who does able to transform, but is more like of a psychic attack. And so that's what you're warding yourself and protecting yourself from. So once again, there's just these weird things intertwining of wolf people, indigenous lore, French migration,
They all have their names. Like I know when it reached, Canada, the French would call it the loup-garou. A loup is a wolf, right? Loup-garou. Yep. In New Orleans, you would change the L to an R, le roux-garou.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. So it's just, this is old. It's old folklore. But of course, people, immigrating here would come with their belief system, as well. So I don't know. Then you have those who study, who gets into ufology and, extraterrestrial species, who say they're just a species. And if you can see a gray materialize in front of you, you could probably see one of these materialize in front of you. So then now you're thinking vampires, or, and I know when I visited the haunted forest in Romania, there's a portal there, and there were the locals that said, there are species that could be vampiric, like vampires and wolves. When I was in Brasov, Romania, they're like, oh, if you go into the courtyard on the full moon, you'll see the wolves. The werewolves they'll come right down from the mountain. I'm like, well, I can't be in two places at once, and I'm going to be in the haunted forest for the full moon. So shit. That means I have to come back another year on the full moon and try to get these guys. So it was really, I love the whole lore of it, but there are people who still firmly believe that this is a thing. Okay, we've got two comments. One, of course, is Wayne. He's saying, we're going to go back to the wolves. He said, I had one of those run by the house one night. It was as tall as a Russian wolfhound, but it was the wrong color and very skeletal looking with a much longer snout. So you guys know where we live. So we're just around the corner from you guys, basically, which is great. Hey. I know. Heads up. Coming your way. Doreen says, north of Burlington on Guelph line, my son and I were driving along, and a very large bird flew over the car. It cast a very large shadow over the car and part of the road. Almost sounds like, would you say, a thunderbird? Is that possible? Do we have those down here?
So that's interesting. There's been lots of people. I love vultures and I love giant birds, and so I do look up a lot of them.
Vultures.
Yeah, I love them, and so therefore, the giant thunderbirds are here in North America associated with the ancient serpents.
Right.
And so there are some people that believe there are a form of, a much older condor. They could live, and there's been sightings for hunters up north. They just, these are guys who live outdoors, who have seen everything, that just swear something huge bird, so there are giant bird sightings as well. And
yes,
and so it's kind of interesting. I know, like this conversation reminds me very much, just so I can state it for some people listening. This doesn't seem very weird for us, and including some of our inner group people. But I do find it interesting sometimes when I'm around other people who identify as witches, that when you begin to have this type of conversation, it starts to get like, I don't know about this. They start to sort of, whereas this should be of no surprise. So the witches have always been aware of these different dimensional beings, different ancient powers, different phenomena that might not even be earthbound. This is something that we're meant to understand and at least have a grasp of, because it afflicts people, and people, they experience these things in dreams, visions, physicals, and to, sometimes so people like yourself, us who help people with spiritual matters, these are things people see, or we see them at times, like, and so it's just reality. There's so many unexplained things. Yeah, so many unexplained things.
Yeah, you work in it, so to be open-minded that these things are there. Stephanie says, I've heard stories about a lake monster in the Hamilton Harbor. It's got to be one hardy lake monster if it's in the Hamilton Harbor. I mean, it's got to be glowing in the dark or something. But I say that with much love. But there's a lot of those big liners that come in through.
So every lake. So the ones we were describing earlier, like connected to this area, which I kind of feel is the same energy. The Lake Ontario near the Niagara River, and Ohio near the Lake Erie near the Niagara River, something same energetic force. But you go up into all lakes around Ontario, and it's within the mythology of Nanabush capturing and battling these serpents. You're not supposed to say their names in the summer. Like, this is something that's very superstitious still, and held to superstition. And I know I work with a lot of First Nations people, and they joke around sometimes about, you shouldn't mention this stuff in the summer. They're kind of kidding around, but they're also saying, don't. Because if you go out in the water, they'll come and get you in the water. You only say these things in the winter.
Forward. It's like an invitation.
Lodge stories, you only talk about these beings in Native American lore in the winter, when they're frozen under ice, far away, people are safe, they're not going out on the water. And that's when you pass on your stories, because you can mention the names of these things, whereas you don't do that in the summer, because you're going to be out fishing, you're going to be in the door, and things can come and get you. It's just a belief. But so every body of water.
In all fairness, the Great Lakes don't freeze over that easily in some spots, and sure in hell not the falls. So I think we're a little doomed.
Now, whatever's in the Hamilton Harbor, we're talking possibly, like you said, a little bit of Godzilla actually going there. Some pollution might have made it. Who knows what?
It might have. We don't know what's in there at all. Certain parts. Unfortunately, our Great Lakes aren't as well loved as they should be with industry. But there's also in the Hamilton Harbor, Stephanie, there's reports of they believe there's a base, a UFO base in there. People have seen something come from the sky on more than one occasion. I've read different reports of it. It goes right down into the water. And we're not talking big, like city size. We're talking smaller, maybe little two-man, two ET jobbers, convertible. No, just little ET jobbers, just little guys that have gone into the water, and people have followed in their cars, and the lights, and they go right into the Hamilton Harbor, and it disappears.
So when I first moved to the Niagara region in the 90s, pre-internet, first thing I came across in the library here, looking up some stuff, about, kind of like what's going on around here, is the first time I discovered hearing about the Port Dalhousie lights. And that's the first time I heard about the belief of some sort of underwater UFO base, and how many people who used to be air traffic controllers for both the American and Canadian military retired to the shoreline of Lake Ontario between, like Hamilton and Kira, Niagara, like that stretch of where, and I've, again, having been down by the, I'm a lake person, so I've always spent a lot of time down by the water, and I have seen multiple times these weird lights over the Lake Ontario, specifically, whether Municipal Beach, Port Dalhousie, the various waterways out there, and so many different nights seeing something that was compelling to me to be like, what the heck did I just see? What was that?
You got to take a ride down River Road. You'll see all kinds of crazy stuff.
I've seen lights right over, right downtown. Like, when I used to live on St. Lawrence and Ryerson, in the downtown core, which is far enough away from, like, the restaurants and the big shiny lights they've got going on there and stuff like that. On a few different occasions, we've seen stuff in the sky over downtown River Road. Yeah.
So coming up where the whirlpool is. Yeah. Okay, let me tell you another little story. My elderly friend I was telling you about, the one that's not from here, he basically said, I know, I have to just put that there because I know a lot of very amazing people. But anyway, he said out of the blue one day, he goes, you know where that whirlpool is? He goes, I don't know exactly where it is, but the whirlpool from the falls. I went, okay, what about it? He goes, there's a craft that sits down there. He goes, and Wayne said it's the only place in the entire river that's deep enough where one could go. He goes, seriously, you know, he goes, if there's going to be one, it's literally the only spot that's deep enough for one. And again, we're not talking city-sized things here, but
Right.
there have been a few occasions, and he was witness to one where something shot right up out of that whirlpool, gone. So it makes sense because you guys are almost right down in the middle of that, like down your street. You're not far from where that would be, are you?
No,
Right.
no, not at all. Right. There's been a few different occasions, and I've had other people, like groups of us, when we've had people visiting and we live downtown, see the same thing. And groups of people down, like, you know, seeing them all together and everyone not knowing what's going on. Right. So yeah, there's something for sure.
We've seen them. Like we've had flashes of light go right across the road, and it's a big drop down to the river. So you're like, the first time it happened to us, we're like, you know, you nobody wants to be that guy, right? And we're just like, do you see that? Yes, I saw it. Thank you for saying it first. So, you know,
River Road's kind of like a hotbed for weirdness, like all sorts. It really is. It really is. And I'm not just talking about like alien stuff. There's like
anything.
Spectral things, spirits. It's like a hotbed of stuff on that road. And especially from Queen Street down to probably like the maybe 3rd or 4th street down from here. Yeah. It's crazy on that little stretch of road. There's been so many weird things that have happened over the years with me driving down that road. It's nuts.
Think about it. It's the road right on the river. It's the river that still, as we speak, is still gouging away. Like they've had to stop the Niagara River from continuing to move back. Right? So it's still gouging out ancient earth. It's a place of, you know, strange wars between the natives. The War of 1812, you know, between both countries on either side of the border. You have all of these mythologies. You've got this collision world, people that come as daredevils and all of the crazy macabre energies. So, you know, there's just that road just is like a serpentine sort of portal in and of itself. It's just all kooky manner of things.
Yeah.
Now these lights, this is one thing for sure. Like the priestess, her name was Lady Rebecca. She was the first one who taught me in the 90s when I entered into witchcraft. Now her and her second in command priestess at the time and myself were at what we call Municipal Beach here in the Niagara region like around this time of year. It was like very cold out, but no snow. And we had to go down to the water for one of them to discard of something. And so I was along for this particular trip. It was really late at night, brutal cold. We had to go right up to the shore. It was a very long beach to get out to. And all 3 of us saw, the only thing we could describe would be some sort of submarine under the water, far enough out, lights flashing, going along there. And so, you know, like all 3 of us just didn't really know what to say. And said, is there submarines? I remember the one girl saying that, is there submarines around here? And, you know, like, I was like, well, no. And I actually said, I go, well, there is some sort of belief I'm aware of that there's some underwater. It's like, what did happen?
USOs.
What did we just see? But it was flashing. It was far out in the water. It was underwater. It was moving very quickly. And I know those waters a little bit because I'm a surfer and I've been out in those deep waters and paddled around up there. I'm not aware of something that could really handle a large submarine out there. It's very shallow water still, but whatever it was. And, you know, it's just, so what is that? If you have multiple generations, all the old guys that I first met when I moved out here talking about the Port Dalhousie lights, these weird lights that shoot out the water and in, like, how can you have multiple people talking about this? I've seen these things. We've all seen these things.
We've seen
so
them.
What are they? You know, like, what are we talking about here? You know, is it UFO? Is it alien craft? Is it phenomena? What is it? So it's a thing that's definitely very localized to this whole peninsula, which is very interesting.
I find the sightings here. I mean, we had a place in Burlington called UFO Lookout between Brant Street and Waterdown Road, and it was right in between us. And I've seen more freaking like black vans quietly just shooting away from that place, and just like, okay, whatever, like all blacked out windows, and you're like, all right. You know, but you expect to see the sightings, and they would have occasional sightings. Moving here, the sightings are regular. I mean, you know, we've had like things just kind of hover over the hood of the car at a light, just like little like triangular things or pyramid shaped thingies, and we're just like, Wayne sees it. I'm like, I'm always like this, right? A million messages. Did you just see that go over the hood of the car? Shit, did I miss something else again? I was like, no, I did not see that, But like the one time again, over River Road was this iridescent thing, and it was huge, and it went way over the top of the stop sign. How tall are those? 8-10 feet tall, those signs,
They
So
gotta be
we're
at least
just like,
10 feet tall.
yeah, we're like, we stop, we look, there's no sign of anything. There's no way it could have been anything. Like a deer would have to need some land to pick up speed. I don't think they could jump that high, but it was that big, and it was a sheer drop right down into the gorge. So we're just like, okay. We've had times, here at the house where this big bright light came shooting in the front window, hit a mirror on the adjacent wall, bounced right back out. I'm just like, that I saw. It was just no missing it. It was huge. We've had, I think I told you the last time you guys were on, we had something shoot through the dining room window. It shook. Remember, the walls in this house are like 3 feet thick. Shook straight out through this window, shook. And we found out because this was like November 1st, 2019, I think, because I was at the studio that night doing a show, and the neighbor contacted Wayne, and somebody hit her house that day. It was filling with water. Like the water main broke and it was filling with water. And I said to him, was it that like the day something came shooting through the house? So that's a huge intersection, Morrison, like that corner, it's huge. And it's like, there's no way somebody could just miss that house. And it's a gigantic intersection. There's no missing that corner. We thought, was he dodging something?
Right.
He hit the house. There's just like, he went through the house, her house.
Wow.
That's
And
very weird. Doesn't surprise me though, because this area is really weird.
Well, for the house to have the amount of water it had at that time, it would have had to have been going for the day. So we were like, great. So I don't know, like Niagara Falls to me has been an anomaly. I've traveled to many different parts of the world. I've seen and experienced some amazing things, but this place is.
It does have a draw. It has a draw to it. I'm not from here. I'm from Toronto. And it's not like I ever spent time here when I was, I don't have family here or anything else where I would be in Niagara Falls. But I've always dreamt of Niagara Falls since I was a kid. Right. I've always had dreams of living in a house, and there was secret passageways, and when you went out the one secret passage, Niagara Falls was in the backyard.
Oh, geez.
And it's a reoccurring dream that I had all the time, and I've always been drawn, which is why I moved here.
Right.
Because it was just, I don't know, it has like some kind of draw. I think it's a spiritual, pull. Because there's so much interesting stuff.
I can see that.
Yeah.
People forget, even in the 80s, remember the harmonic convergence? Yeah.
Yep.
I remember that as a kid. But yeah, Niagara Falls is one of the places of the harmonic convergence. It's a known power part of the world. It has a very strange, we forget too, it's just so commercialized here on this side. It's kind of funny, how people do stand here and they say, oh, look how ugly the American side is. And I always kind of remind them, you know what, the American side actually is a little more unique because it's all parkland over there. Okay. And so you can actually interact with the river and the falls in a completely different way that we don't get here. Here we're surrounded by the tourist buildings. Yeah. It's basically Las Vegas meets Cancun on, meets Niagara Falls, right? That's what we have here.
Yeah.
But it's still, for me, it's always the odd hours, weird times of the year when it's empty, and being in lots of the, you got to go outdoors a lot and you got to look up a lot. It's, I think, a lot of people have forgotten, like you say, to, keep your eyes on the sky a little bit more often and less in front of the phone, down below you.
It is. And do you notice how many caves we have? I did not notice until the pandemic when everything was shut down. And because you can never see the other side. the amount of wall of people that are here. And I'm glad the tourists are here. I'm glad they love it. They love coming here as much as we love being here. But driving by one day and I'm like, is that a freaking cave? And you could see there's quite a few going into the actual sides of the other side of the falls. And I don't even know how people would get to them. So it makes you wonder, once upon a time, did they, or is something digging its way out?
Well, again, that goes down to like mythology, Iroquois mythology, that those caves along the shore there were filled with portals to literally evil realms and filled with serpents. And at the time, there were a lot of snakes. There still are a lot of snakes. You do that hike down into the gorge, in the right time of year, there are a lot of snakes there, really big ones, fox snakes and rat snakes.
I don't mind snakes as long as they stay on their own side of the river.
Right. But those caves have always had a strange mythology wrapped around them. And I hiked into that one on the American side, Devil's Hole. I went, I had to check it out finally because it's considered to be a very nefarious place.
That's way down though, right?
Yeah, evil spirits. So I hiked all the way down and went into it, and it's definitely really weird. You hear dripping where you don't. It's pretty trippy, no doubt about it. And you feel the heaviness.
Right.
I'm not really a big fan of tight places, but so far I was willing to go.
Right.
And I was like, okay, I've gone far enough.
Right. I'm good. I'm getting the feeling. Now these cave entrances are very high up. So if you're at road level, and you just stop and you just look up at road level, they're just a few feet down, or from where I'm standing, it could be 100 feet down for all I know. But on the other side, you can see little entrances.
Yeah.
They're not just like
good pictures of those. Yeah, you can take pictures of it actually, especially in the winter when the snow's there, you can kind of sometimes see where the holes are, right? Like we had we took a couple of really good pictures because they looked like, I don't know, cool shapes. I can't remember exactly what they looked like now, but they were, you can see, right? Yeah,
they're big enough to catch your attention. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Out of all, the markings and the little, deteriorating pieces of wall, they're big enough to catch your attention.
That they are.
Now, one interesting thing, completely random.
I like random.
Talking about it earlier was several years ago, I was coming back from New Orleans on a plane with my then partner, and we were flying into Buffalo. And so we're coming in very low and turning around the Buffalo Airport. There's a huge little pond lake around there, surrounded by a lot of, old forests, and then, eventually there's strip malls and stuff. But, the plane was banking to come around. We're flying pretty low. And I looked down into the water. I was just looking at it because I'd never really seen it like that before. And I saw what I thought was a whale in that water come up to the surface and down. And I thought I was super tired. So I said nothing and kind of looked at the seat in front of me and was like, man, I got to get some sleep. And then my partner goes, she says, I think I just saw a dolphin down in that pond. And I'm like, did you just see that? And she's like, yeah. I was like, what the hell was that? So
I know.
Then it became this sort of like, fascination. And that's when, right about the time that I had come across Jesse Corn Planter's book. And I was really pleased to read all the different aspects of the serpent. But lo and behold, doesn't in that story talk about those waterways along that area of like Tonawanda heading in towards outer, that part of Buffalo, that those ponds have these giant sort of slug water creatures that would come to the surface and go away again. And so when I read that, I'm like, oh my God. So I took it to her. I'm like, look at what this says. And she's like, that's that thing we saw on the plane. I'm like, what else could it be? And I've told my friend Reverend Tim Shaw, who lives in Buffalo, who's really tapped into the whole, metaphysical, paranormal zones and cryptids of Western New York. And I mentioned that, and he was vaguely familiar with what I was talking about. And again, I know him, he knows me, and he knew my partner at the time. He's like, so we saw that and did know that this sort of like thing existed. Then what else can it be? What I don't know what it is, but
he knows you. You're not going to start just weaving tales.
Oh, that's right. And that's what I feel like some people listening to the show right now. I know some people I know are listening to it and going, what the hell are these people talking about?
It's like, Utu, we've never heard you talk about stuff like that. What is this stuff?
I want to remind these people that they pray to Hecate. They pray to Egyptian gods. And, they believe
the spirit.
Come on now. So there are some things that we can all agree upon. And these are the mysteries we still don't have the answers to, that every witch should be investigating, in my humble opinion, to know the, paranormal or the indigenous or the metaphysical, power of the region you live in, because that's where a witch should be sourcing their power for their magic, manifesting it, conjuring it, wielding it. So if there's a certain place where you live that has a certain current, certain energy, certain lore, certain manifestations, you should be familiar with them. And then even better, travel as much as possible and then attune yourself to find out, well, what is this lore? Because the more we travel and the more we go to places, the more we experience these phenomena all around the world, and we discover that there's a lot of similarities.
Right.
It makes us have to sit here and go, well, what are these lights flying around? Are they crafts? Are they people? What is it? What's with these wolf people? What are these things swimming in waters? Like, what is going on here?
Well,
it's all part of the mysteries.
Here's something else. The Fae. Do we have a Fae community here?
Yeah, we do.
Your show. Let's go. Right.
Floats into my, we haven't talked about, the forest entities and beings and things that float around in there. And that's something that I'm super in tune to. And there's a few different forests here that I've had some interesting experiences in. I work a lot with trees, so they hold their own very interesting magic. And I fully think that because I travel to the UK a lot, and I spend a lot of time on the Isle of Man.
Yeah, it's beautiful there.
It's absolutely probably the most beautiful place I've ever been to in my life, and I've traveled a lot. But they have, the ferry bridge, but the real ferry bridge, not the one that you see when the tourists come and, and I've been taken to this very sacred space in the woods. And we have that kind of stuff here as well. And there's certain spaces and places where, you'll see some interesting stuff. One of the parks here, which is kind of, I guess it's considered, is Woodend considered St. Catharines? I suppose it's considered St. Catharines. Woodend is a park that is filled with stuff. It's filled with interesting things. And I don't know if you've ever been there, Michelle.
I know it. Yes. I can't say I've had the opportunity to go through it.
Oh, you have to.
Yes.
It's absolutely spectacular. There's actually a couple places in St. Catharines that are really, really very magical. I've got some really interesting pictures on my phone, actually, of some cool stuff.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, maybe I should go with you.
Yeah.
I mean,
seems to be where stuff pops out to me.
Right.
Forest.
Right, which would make sense. Like you say, you go to the UK. When I was in the Highlands, and we came across the Fairy Glen and the Fairy Circle, the Fairy. They have the Fairy Falls, and I know because I unwittingly just sent my son into the Fairy King's Grotto. I'm like, take one for the team. You're the small one. Get in there. And it's like, okay, I'm on it. Hold my backpack. It's all right, go. But I found it just fascinating because, they had these rock formations, these circular rock formations. They were huge, and the people, even the tourists that come, they just honor them. You can see where offerings are made, and like the history, everything of it is completely intact. Like people are very aware of these beings more so than many of the other elementals and little people. There's just such a mix of everything. But what I do find interesting is how people will automatically assume that all fairies are just cute little Tinkerbell fairies. They don't realize they'll kick your hand. Well, hand you your own ass if they really wanted to, but they're not always so cute.
Well, that's one of the things about the people on the Isle of Man. They're very reverent towards those spirits and that belief, even though, it may be, it's still very intertwined in their everyday, they don't drive by even the tourist ferry bridge without saying hello to the little people. You just don't do it unless you want to have an issue, right? It's acknowledged and it's, revered still in their culture. So, which is super cool.
Like gnomes. I don't like
Yeah, and of
gnomes.
course you have your different branches, right? Like again, even in Scotland, you have the little people, but then
Yes.
the fairy race are considered to be the same size as us. They're human size. You know, they
Wow.
just live in a different dimension. And so
Right.
even the Tuatha De Danann, like, they're considered that way. They're considered
Mhm.
fairy kings, but they're all
Yes.
6 foot tall, radiant beings that have swords and shields like that. They war in that region, in their realm.
Right. Right.
And so you've got your little sprites, your little people, and then you have,
Mhm.
even when they refer to the little people, sometimes we're referring to the particular race of fairies that are human sized. And so, and again, a friend of mine, a great colleague, Orion Foxwood, he's written lots of books, and he runs this thing called the Fairy Seership. And I was always curious because he's also an Appalachian conjure man. So eventually I had him visiting my place a lot to come up and present. And I eventually was able to sit down one time and be like, okay, I need to get into your fairy world. Like, what is going on here? And so he just laid it all out that, again, like dragons, that the fairy race, they are very ancient.
Yes.
They know more. And he says that they actually, he says that, yes, every culture has them. He says, and even when people migrate or colonize various places, those fairies end up interacting with each other. He talked about here in the Americas, how there's little people in indigenous lore.
Mhm.
But yet that's those people who eventually, they came from somewhere else. We know this. We know that Native Americans and First Nations people came onto this continent at some point when it was safe to do so throughout humanity. So he says that even before then, the Appalachian Mountains, when they were giant, that there was a race of these fairies already there. They still exist. All of these fairy realms interact around the world. Every continent has them. And so right away, I was like, oh, okay. So, that's so very interesting. And so, yeah, I mean, Cat Shop, I've been in here a few times where people walk in, talk about fairies, and, they want to build a shrine to them, or they want to have a book
That's so
of fairy
nice.
magic.
We have
Yeah.
our fairy
That's what we have.
shrine back here.
That's what's behind
Very
us.
nice. The fairy shrine. Oh no, I love it. I love the lore of it. I know when you go back into the time of Druids, like really ancient times, these tall fairy beings that you just talked about would work with people. And it really wasn't until again the church came in, the Christian belief system, where they tried to just pretty much turn people against them. It's like you can't trust them, they're evil, blah blah blah. Like we as humans, our mindsets are so easily programmed, and I thought, gosh, and over time they just withdrew into their own communities and ventured away from humanity, which is sort of it's just so very sad. But I love the whole lore of it.
I mean, just Scottish lore alone, like just I can just
Mhm.
speak from that, my country people. Like it's still occasionally some sort of bizarre love tryst of some sort between some man or woman out in the wilds all along the coast with some sort of fairy person. Like there's love affairs that still are tribute,
Wow,
right?
I love
That
that.
still happens that way. And so,
Right.
but my mother, if something really negative is happening potentially, or something keeps going missing, she doesn't say it in a reverent way, in her actions. She's like, there's fairies taking things. Like it becomes something like something's not right. Fairies are getting in here. Something needs to be done about it.
Oh, wow, right.
So there's even
Yeah.
lords like that. There's the mischievous nature of, or the things that they sometimes will be like, you know what? Screw this house. I'm going to mess this house up. Say goodbye to remote control. Hope you weren't planning on watching TV. It's
There
gone.
it
Things like
goes.
this, right? The little things we attribute to mischief, but but they also bring sometimes a little bit of fear, into people that you don't, like you guys are saying, those places of reverence for the fairies, you acknowledge them,
Mhm.
or bad luck can happen to you.
And
Well, it's like what you were saying with the Tuatha De Danann, where their original story is they came down on a cloud and riding this fierce cloud, and they came into Ireland. And I always thought, hey, maybe they're aliens and they were coming down on, I swear I did. Maybe they're
Ancient aliens think that.
right.
Ancient aliens
Well,
think that.
literally, why not? Why not?
Well,
Right.
no, I
Yeah.
agree with you. Why not? I
Why
don't
not?
know. I mean, I like to think that there's so many parts of this planet, that we know nothing about, that they could be inhabiting anywhere. We have cave systems. We have, the mythical Middle Earth. There's all kinds of different lore and possibilities. Everybody looks to the stars for things, but realistically, I think even extraterrestrial beings could have been here long before us. But
For sure.
I have to hold this thought because I have to do a station ID. I'm going to get my ass whooped. So did I say ass? I'm sorry. So
I've been watching my language very much.
I know. I know. And here I am, the hostess, blah, blah, blah. But okay. We are the Outer Realm minus my little bubbly companion, Amelia. I hope she starts feeling better soon. We are here with Utu, Witchdoctor, and Cat Thagard from the Cat and Monkey, I should say that, in Niagara Falls. We are talking about folklore, cryptids, just weird tales. My God, UFOs, you name it. If it has to do with Niagara Falls, these guys have the inside info. We are broadcasting on the United Public Radio Network. We are on 8 different platforms streaming simultaneously for your listening pleasure. Big shout out to Folgers Coffee, who have been with us since day one. Thank you, Folgers. You make this all possible. Also, big shout out to Dr. Snick, the sonic surgeon, who is an award-winning composer of Halloween, horror, sci-fi, dark wave, electronic music, which can be found on pretty much any streaming platform. And he sponsors us with the contribution of his voice and his music for our intro and outro. So thank you very much. And we're back. So we've got comments. Let me get to the comments.
I'm sure.
Okay. Yeah, we've got comments. Okay. Teresa Slowinski. I absolutely agree that all witches should familiarize themselves with the local lore and energies. I also agree with that. Stephanie, places of power are wonderful, as I think they call to you the places of power within oneself, hence making you empowered.
Mm-hmm.
You guys can
I know
cut
both
in
those ladies personally. They're very amazing.
There we go. There we go, ladies. Here's a question, I guess, for you, Utu. Is that why the national animal of Scotland is the unicorn? Scotland is a place known for mixing magic, folk tales, and everyday life.
I wish I had some logical answer for why the national animal of Scotland is a unicorn.
I think it's awesome.
I've had this. I've sat many times and thought, we had wolves at one point. We have whales. We actually have sharks along our coast. Like the unicorn, I don't really know what to say about that. It definitely is about it is encapsulating ancient magic for sure. But I could understand if it was like the standard of Scotland, like like the dragon is for Wales. But the national animal, like we're basically attributing. It doesn't get much more crypto zoological than that. On behalf of Scotland, our animal is the unicorn. Like we're saying, oh no, there was animal.
Loves unicorns.
It's not a heraldic mystery. No, it's our national animal. You have a problem with that.
I know. I say, oh, hail the unicorn, darn it. So, I love it. Another question for you guys. Can you comment on the small stone chambers in New England, USA? Who created them? What are they for? Thank you. If you're aware of them or if you're familiar with them.
I am not familiar with stone, but there's definitely some crazy, things out there. I've spent a lot of time out there. Lots of Sasquatch, those little ones, those little monkey cheek. What are they called again? Whatever. Yeah, they're little. I know people who are talking about seeing them. It's just crazy.
Puckwedgies, aren't they?
Puckwedgie, that's it.
We just had a guest on who was talking about them. I said I have to keep saying that name because I just like to say it. Puckwedgie.
The first time I heard someone talking about seeing them, they were just like conversation we're having now, and they're like, "Oh no, I've seen them when I go fishing and stuff." I'm like, "Whoa!" And I had to look them up. I was like, "Wow, okay." But I don't know anything about chambers. I don't know anything about rock chambers. I don't know about that.
Right. Okay. Next, of course, Wayne. He said he had problems with gremlins in his garage many years ago. Things would go missing, so he started leaving stuff out for them to play with, and then things settled down. And once he realized what was going on, he discovered that they were very good at finding things that he had misplaced. So, a bit of a strange learning curve.
Yeah, that's the perfect way. You
Yeah.
get, again, that's one of the ways to placate fairies or things, is to give them something,
Mm-hmm.
and then to, build a place for them so
Mm-hmm.
that they'll, live in
Give them a
harmony.
job.
Give them something to do, give them something shiny, give them something they like, give them some alcohol, whatever it is, to.
Give them something shiny. What
I
are they like?
literally
Frozen?
haven't heard anyone talk about gremlins since I was probably about 10.
I
It's
know.
funny because my brother, who was the one who initially got me, into everything that I do, really,
Right.
used to tell me to always leave some change on the floor under the table because gremlins would, get my feet and stuff like that if I didn't
Oh
do
my
that.
gosh.
And he
I
used to
think he
freak
was
me out.
yanking your chain big time.
And I would tell my mom, and she'd be like, "Oh my God, your brother's
Don't listen to that.
But
Sherry says that, hey, Sherry, that she was told the Fays love bread and honey as an offering.
I've heard that too. Yeah.
Very
I leave them
interesting.
shiny things. We leave them shiny stuff, or sometimes there's some jewelry or other things
Right.
back there. But I've heard that as well.
Yeah, food. People will
Food.
give out food
So-
offerings for the fae.
Right. Okay. This is good. Another question for you guys. Also, Dave Petrella, were the Druids in North America at all? And if so, how do you think they got here? They go
Well,
way back.
I
Way
suppose
back.
anything's possible. If we knew the Earth was round, there's obviously proof that, Druids are obviously they go back much longer than Vikings, but we know the
Yeah.
Norse were here hundreds and
Mhm.
hundreds of years before, the other Europeans got here.
Mhm.
There's a great deal of evidence, I believe, that because of how easy it is to sail a ship across the Atlantic Ocean from parts of Africa right into Brazil and South America, where those trade winds, when they happen, and you can do it in about 3 weeks.
Right.
There's probably, multiple times that seafarers made it there. We
Mhm.
have proof that Asians made it into the west coast of the United States. Polynesians, even when they were doing that, got as far as South America and then went back out to the islands. So
Mhm.
could Druids have? Maybe. The question ultimately would come down to, were they seafaring? They
Mhm.
tended to be a bit more inland. I know that they were kind of in Britain as well, but
Mhm.
I suppose anything's possible.
Mhm.
I know there are Druids here now who definitely attribute a lot of their mysteries towards a lot of things. But if there was any ancient Druids, I
Mhm.
suppose anything's possible. Everybody was getting around a lot sooner than our history books would like to recognize, or we just don't want to acknowledge certain things. There's Asian artifacts,
Yeah.
1,000 years old on the West Coast. They know that their boats made it here.
Oh yeah.
Polynesians,
Absolutely.
the Polynesians made it to Ecuador, Peru area on the coast and back.
The
They
Vikings made it to South America, for
made
God's
it up.
sakes.
Yeah. So
It's like, if you were seafaring, I think,
yeah,
sky was the
there was all
limits.
manner of expeditions happening with holy men, explorers, and different people, warriors going out to check things out. So
Mhm.
I can't see why there wouldn't have been some crossover there.
Well, he says, great information, Utu. Thank you. That would be the shortest place to cross. I agree. Wayne talking about the gremlins. Oh man, I had placed new ear protection on my bench and came back 15 minutes later. They were gone. I told the air to bring them back or I'd take away everything. And literally a bit later, they were back. Told the air. I like that.
I can see them doing it too.
That's that. Okay. I know early you guys were talking about dragon lore. I find when I hear about sightings of dragons and such, it's predominantly in the UK. Is there any dragon lore stories for the USA and Canada? This was all dragon lore in Canada. That was at the beginning of the show. I will make a point of making sure the archive is posted relatively quick so you can catch it, because there was quite a bit that you guys were making mention of that.
Yes, I think there's a bit more history of it in Britain, definitely in Wales. That definitely seems to be a place where there's a tradition of it to this day.
Mhm.
Some famous witches definitely still participate in that, in the mist, even teaching kids to call forth dragons from the mist. But
Mhm.
over here in the Americas, it definitely can happen. They do manifest. It's all about the right time, location, people that you're around. Because even in the pagan and witchcraft community, which I'm really immersed in when I travel around it. When dragons come up, it seems to be something that gets relegated to the fantasy realm a bit more than things that can be, evoked and brought forth into this realm, or that can be propitiated, or that have dominance over a particular place. So, again, where there's fae, there's dragon too. It's much the same thing. To placate something, you give it something. You give dragons throughout history, and that's the way I work with the one here in the region, is to give it gifts, to give it unique things, or to explain that you're going to give it reverence far and wide. And that's what the Dragon Ritual Drummers did. That's where we named ourselves that. We designed a travel logo from it, and then we tell that story a lot everywhere we go, and attribute our success in many ways to our sort of connection to that. So as long as you make offerings and can connect with it, I think that to find it, they can be sighted here. I've heard of lots of those sightings. It's just that sometimes it's the native sighting, or sometimes it's somebody who's invoked something or brought something forth. Or you just got to find the right people to be honest, that you can have an honest conversation.
Yeah. So what happens if you make an offering and you're invoking and you bring something forward that maybe you shouldn't have, or you don't know how to send it back, and you have the dragon flying through your house like a 747?
That is part of the mythology of even placating a dragon.
Right.
That it represents a primal force.
Right.
That doesn't care if it stands on you or crushes you. I mean, if you even come across a wild bear, in the woods, and you're like, hey, I think I can feed that thing a couple of pieces of chicken. You might, but then it might just knock you out of the way in a manner that lions or whatever it is. Wild ants, like things with primal, and something that's as big as that or as ancient as that. Yeah, we can become a speck very quickly. So it does come with some, it comes with hazards. It comes with, like all magic, any strange ceremonial ancient magic comes with hopefully some sort of like guides and what to do properly and what to look out for and what not to do. And I think dragon magic is wrought with these types of things to be careful, because there's a primality that you're invoking. And again, I think it helps if you're at a place where that does happen. So where it can happen more than other places. It's not exactly the best place, on the QEW and the 403. There's still the dragon right here on the on-ramp.
This is a good spot.
So, location.
You could be putting a challenge out there. You got to be careful. Some people are daring. No, exactly. That is a fascinating thing. I'll have to keep my eyes open for that. We don't often, view the area, but that is interesting. Hold on, another comment. Put mine aside there. That's amazing. Thanks, Utu. I've always been super fascinated by them. I definitely missed the first part of the dragon conversation. LOL. Definitely going to be doing some more research on them. Maybe you need to do another class on that.
Yeah,
maybe the folklore of the region and teaching people how to connect with it. And I would certainly come.
Yeah, when we did the dragon class here, I definitely mentioned it a little bit. It does. Now, I do a lot of that work with my crew and guys and stuff, and sometimes outer community. But it's one of those strange things that one does have to wander and tread lightly in. So in private, no problem. Talking about it, great. If I was to do something that's public where there's, it does tread slightly into something that's sacred. And so I'm aware of that. And it doesn't make me go, oh man, I wish I could do that. But so it's just one of those things, like dragon magic of this area. Yes, if you're going to talk about dragon magic in this area, you're going to come across it. So it usually just has to be a bit more diverse about just them in general. And it just so happens that when we're doing, especially a cat shop here, there's a few blocks from you can go outside and see the mist. So it helps a little bit to really connect that we're on a cliff. We're on a cliff and we can tap into it. So, probably going to do another dragon magic class. So I was thinking about it.
They're saying so. So Sanj says, please do another class.
A lot of class ideas. And then all of a sudden, a couple
Blanche says, yes, please do the class. And then says, oh, hello. After she says, yes, please. So that was Blanche. So I don't know. Maybe this is another good idea. See, I think you guys just have to flood these guys with requests and just do it. I think it would be really interesting.
We did have more things planned out. The way that Cat does stuff, I do stuff. We were trying to figure out what can we do for the community. But, obviously, we've all of a sudden had to sort of perturb our numbers and sit back a
It's
little bit, because here we are in a shutdown of another shutdown currently. So
this is true too. Yes,
perfect
we
time,
are.
by the way, to be out and about, because it's very quiet again.
Yes.
And we might not get another time like this. So
It's
we're just not, we're so close to you. You should see Queen Street. It's like you can walk in the middle of the road. There's not a silhouette there, and it's
which
just so
is nice.
it's
I like
so
it.
intense, right? So that quiet
Mhm.
opens up so many things. It's already gotten quiet. I saw a fox in my backyard last night. Just the amount of people that aren't out the streets is now allowing already, not just human, not just natural creatures, but paranormal and other realms start to be louder, more prevalent. And right now, I think we'll look back. This lockdown sucks, but there's always a sweetness to it, that you can sort of tap into some things, hear things you normally couldn't hear, see things you normally couldn't see. And once this, whole craziness is behind us, I think a lot of mystical people will look back at this point in time and be like, I can't believe how quiet it was. And they'll always remember those interactions with spirit and nature, that we'll never experience that again. Well, I mean, unless some other pandemic comes, but I don't think so.
The gift that keeps on giving, It's like
I'm just being very positive right now. I got a very positive outlook that I think we'll be all right, but here we are.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I think it's a time to relish. I love just being able, to drive down along the river, and especially in the evenings. Everything is so quiet. Things are so quiet. I mean, you can hear the falls some nights, like almost like you're right beside them. It's just amazing, but oh my goodness, it won't last long.
Even the
Rachel,
animals on Queen Street, there's a skunk outside right now. Like,
is there? Oh my
like
gosh.
they're everywhere. It's crazy.
Oh gosh.
He's out there digging away to garbage just before we came in. He's getting in there. He knows what he wants. I could walk almost up to him and he doesn't care. He's
It's infested with skunks.
He's so cute.
They are cute. They're very smelly. It reminds me of a tale that, Wayne was outside and he was writing one night, and he's used to, like, there's a couple local cats that come around, and he had a little treat. So he pulls it out of the bag, goes, come here. He's not paying attention. Skunk waddles over and starts eating the treats. And he looks down, he's like, oh, don't panic the skunk, So, but it's the skunk's like, sure, I'm down for that. Whatever. Rachel says it was a very memorable evening, your last class. Love skunk, says Blanche. And here's a question. Are there any Port Colborne legends or lore?
Oh, kind of bad that I used to live in Port Colborne.
I was going to say,
think of one now.
I think everything's pretty much centralized. Like,
I mean, it's Lake Erie, so there's tons of Lake Erie stuff, right? From UFOs to
yes.
I think these little old ports, just from what I know, is mostly localized ghost ships, ghost boats.
Oh yeah.
That's wherever you find these things, where there was once a vibrant port.
Well, Lake Erie's got what, like 5,000 wrecks or something?
Yeah.
You're bound to have something.
Yeah, the ghost ships underrated in the Lake Erie is the Great Lakes. How many of them, and what a big part of that lore there is. Ghosts of the waterways are unique. So for Port Colborne, I mean, the only thing I know about is localized ghosts, and it's just, again, it's Lake Erie. It's connected to where the water serpent is. It's it's all part of the peninsula. So you can but I bet you there's localized ghost specific on that. It's
I'm sure it's a cute, small, quaint little town that has all that old charm down by the harbor, and I'm sure they have I didn't spend enough time there.
Right, I know.
I was always in the falls, right? Because my shop's here, so it's rarely there.
Yes.
But I'm sure there's tons. Actually, now I'm going to ask a couple friends I know that live there what their lore is.
You have to collect maybe some ghost stories and have you guys come back on and just do ghost stories.
Yeah. Oh,
that's another thing. There's a lot of ghost stories around here for sure. We all know those, and how unique some of them are. That, to me, that's just now we're talking normal time.
That's
right?
Normal time.
That's a Wednesday.
Yeah.
No, exactly. Sherry actually lived. I can attest to her experiences. She was Lake Erie. Yes, I know firsthand. Loaded, especially Port Dover, which is where she lived, and I can tell you, that working with Sherry for the last 2 years, it's fully loaded in Port Dover.
Oh, I can imagine. I love Port Dover.
Yeah, that used to be the biggest fishery at one point. I didn't know that till I finally went there one time and realized, so that's what this was. And just imagine the industry of old ghost ships and all that happened there before it became the tourist place it is now. Yeah, it's
wow, really?
Not so fun.
You know there has to be stories, around any place along the waterways. I mean, I've yet to visit any place near the waterways, especially coming up all the way from, the East Coast, all the way down the Great Lakes, just riddled with stories. I've done tours and events at so many places along these areas, and it's just always the same thing. Everybody, including the Indigenous, would always settle around the waterways as a source of food, water, everything.
All those little towns out that way, from Dover to Turkey Point to Pilsenberg, they're full of tons of stories. I spent a lot of time there. My grandmother used to live in Pilsenberg, so I spent all my summers there.
Loaded there.
Loaded. Yeah, for sure.
Oh my God. Yeah. See, I just grew up in the Great White North, where we just, connected up with normal elemental spirits. The ghost stories there were ghost stories, but you just didn't hear about them the same way as you would hear about having actual elemental experiences. They're very abundant up there because it was untouched in so many areas. Right. That's why you could sit with a wild timber wolf, and not have any issues. You sit just one mountain across and you just stare at each other.
That's cool.
I would hike the mountains. I'd be like between 8 and 11 years old. I would hike through the mountains, and you just didn't have those fears. I would just sit there and, you have an apple or whatever. And he would just, a couple of occasions that happened to just sit there, stare at you. You're staring at him. You just have to have the respect, don't look him in the eye when you're getting up to move, and you get out alive. So, I think it was bigger than me.
Yeah, keep your wings. Don't make eye contact.
Exactly. They're big. I don't think people really understand how big a timber wolf is. It's not like a gray wolf. I mean, these things are big. When you have a pickup truck, and you can have one look right over the hood of the truck into the window.
It's funny. I don't think people realize how large a lot of animals are. Like, I would never have fathomed the exact size of a moose until you actually see the size of a moose. It's insane. Yeah.
Try looking at a moose from the inside of a 300 ZX.
No,
you're like this
scary.
2 of them coming down from Wawa, coming down to St. Marie from Manitoba. Right. And you have a hill that's literally like this. And you're coming down at 2:00 in the morning, and all of a sudden you see 2 moose. You're the only person on the road, and they're mesmerized by the headlights, and the car's this big, and you have to sit there, turn everything off while you have the bull and you have, the female, and they're just sauntering and staring at you, and you're like, I'm going to die on this highway at 2 a.m. and nobody else is around to see it.
That's crazy. They could crush that car.
They could. They were, I never grasped how big they were, like you say, until they're bigger than the car. And I was just like, oh my gosh. And then they just got bored after 20 minutes of looking at the car and walking around it. And I'm just going, don't move. And between that and the Sasquatches that were often reported out there, you're just waiting for something to come and crush the car. But they left.
And it out alive in that thing.
Turn it on. I know. It's just like, God, I should have taken the Camaro. But either way, my friend, we'll take my car, better fuel efficiency. Yeah, well, you're asleep, and I'm sitting there going, great. She'll never see it coming. It's okay. There are things in their woods, and sometimes they're very benign, and they're very, things that everybody sees. Now we got moose stories. So it says, we saw 32 of them on our way back from the Viking camps in Newfoundland. So my Poppy's place about 3 hours away. 32 big guys.
That's crazy.
Blanche said, we've driven by moose in Newfoundland that I could seriously walk under, and I'm not short. There we go, right there.
Mm-hmm.
Canadian giraffes. That's what we call them. The Canadian giraffe.
There we go. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, I think so far, I love the interaction. This is great. You guys have some fun people in here too. We have our regulars, and everybody's just very respectful and listening, and they're throwing the odd comment in. So we've got about 10 minutes. So what do you want to cover? What do you want to get in there? This is usually around the part where we promote ourselves. We, what you
Well,
want people to know.
I
What you have
will do
coming
a
up.
mini promotion of things. So just
Absolutely.
let's get out of the way, and then
Yeah.
we can.
Take all the time you want. We go over. It's not a big deal.
So, if anyone is interested is listening to this, I am going to be on an online event this weekend, and it's called Manifestasia. So if anyone wants to look that up, it's manifestasia.com. I was invited to be on a thing called the Social Justice Panel. I don't know if this is some sort of joke that's I've just been going along with it. I'm going to be on it. It's online, and we're going to talk about social justice work. That's happening, and that's this weekend. But there's also a lot of other really unique workers that I know who some of them are personally, presenting classes on there and talking about magic and what they do. I know one of them very well. Byron Ballard is an amazing writer and an Appalachian witch as well. And so she's definitely one of the people and written many books. She'll be on that. So there's a bunch of classes happening this weekend. Manifestasia. Also, coming up on February 18th weekend, myself, Cat, my band of Dragon Rich drummers, members of my band, and about 90 other presenters are all part of WitchCon.
Ooh.
And that's an online festival conference called WitchCon. WitchCon.com. You can't go wrong with that. It's easy to remember. WitchCon.com. That's almost 100 teachers from around the world. You can attend it live, but you also, when you pay to have access to it, you can just, because it's impossible to watch all of those things happen, but you can attend the various things, pick and choose, interact in all these sort of social areas, and then go back. You got access to it permanently and go back and watch every one of those classes if you wanted. So when you think about that, for like literally $100 something, you could have access to nearly 100 teachers, pretty renowned ones who have helped pave the way in some of the modern magics. That would dramatically change your spiritual world to go back and listen to every one of those lectures and classes. So that's what we're doing, WitchCon. And we kind of make it. We did it last year. It was the first year. And it's going to happen probably here at Cat Monkey again, because my band will play in here. Kat will probably do her class from here. I'll probably do mine. I think even a couple of other guys will be doing it. And so even though it's an online event, we're all hanging around for the whole weekend. And we noticed that that's the case for a lot of people at WitchCon. They're all at houses, hanging out together. And so WitchCon is very unique. That's been put on by people who are actually living down in New Orleans, the guys that run Hex and Omen. Wow. So WitchCon, that's coming up in February. So that's, other than the occasional class, which I don't know, I'm sure how many of them are between now and then. That's what we're doing. I got Manifestasia this weekend, and then on February 18th weekend, we've got, which is the President's Day / Family Day weekend. There's WitchCon.
Excellent. And Sanj says, do a dragon class.
And a dragon class. This is nice and quiet, maybe.
Yeah, she's throwing that in for good measure. So, and Doreen says, thank you for your wisdom. So, yes, this is awesome.
I actually want to take a moment to thank all of, I recognize a lot of these names, Stephanie and Teresa and Sanj and Blanche. And Teresa, she's connecting from all the way up in Midland area. And she's got a great page on Facebook, The Slavic Witch. So she really taps into, she's initiated in the same African Jewish religions to some degree that I am, but we also celebrate our cultures quite a bit. So she does Polish and Slavic ancestry. She does a lot of great work there. And Stephanie Parashi's, she's married to one of my good friends. They're a unique married couple. They spend some time in Greece, very much about the Greek pantheon and Greek gods.
I've been to Greece. I love it.
And they make great Greek food, I can tell you that.
That's always the best. I love Greek food. Lots of oregano. Never expected that with Greek food. It was awesome. I'm like, God, I should be in Italy. So, I'm in Paris after I've been to Greece eating oregano for 2 weeks. I'm like, why do I smell oregano? And I realized that my room in the old section of Paris was right over a Greek restaurant. I'm like, damn, I'm just going to go have myself some more amazing Greek food. So it was awesome. It's great. But I really want to thank you guys for coming back on. This was so much fun. You guys are just a lot of fun. It's just like we're all hanging out over there, having a parlay about all this cool stuff that's in the area. And honestly, I'm just going to have to start, keeping my eyes peeled from aside from sometimes I think I'm a UFO magnet, but all of this other interesting stuff. So if one, aside from, going to St. Catharines, if one wanted to interact with the Fae, where would be a good place to go and look?
Oh, geez. Any of the many forests here.
I actually had I joke around a lot about having great interaction with them along the water.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I collect or try to collect holy stones, the stones with the rocks in them.
Right.
There's been times where when I found them, like the fairies, and then I'll say something, I leave money, and boom, I find a big one, and
he doesn't try. Whenever we go foraging, he gets all of them, and I'm still looking for one, and he's got 15. He's like a hagstone magnet.
I like hagstones, though.
The Fae love him. They give him gifts all the time.
So St. Catharines, the best place, right? Any wooded area. For sure. So, St. Catharines has all those trails along the escarpment. You can go hike along the escarpment in there. That's a great place.
Mm-hmm.
Down by the water, remote spots down by the water, the land spit, places like that, that are going to be a lot of people. And Wood End, that's their little Wood End Park.
Little park.
It's a park in St. Catharines, right in the middle of St. Catharines, which is really cool as well. Very, very old foresty area, foresty spots.
Right. It's funny. You would find them in a place like that. The forest, I understand, or the park, but just surrounded by busy life.
Well, it's just basically like the coyotes. They all got to go somewhere, right? So an arc of nature.
The coyote. They might be offended. Okay. So lastly, we've got Teresa says, Kat, you got to come here to Georgian Bay for the Holy Stones. There we go.
Oh, I'd love to.
Yes.
Oh, sure.
Yes. And Zach Man, heading out for the night. Thank you, Utu and Kat, for joining us. I always say Zach's like one of our extra hosts. Have a good night, everybody. Have a great weekend. You too, Zach. We'll see you next week. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us. I would love to do this again, in the second half of the year. If you can come up with more lore or ghost stories or something that we can wow our listeners with.
Yeah, that would be great.
Tonight, abundant. Yeah,
tonight was good. It was perfect lodge stories. Here we are bunkered down in our little cold regions in the cold of the winter. So
it is cold out there too. So it's a perfect time to be telling such tales. So anyhow, but thank you guys. We have come to the end of the show. But
thanks for having us.
Yeah, always a pleasure.
Always, a pleasure indeed.
And hey, we have much love to poor Amelia.
I hope she's feeling better.
I hope so too.
I finally brought that milkshake for her, so she's just gonna have to.
Oh, is that right? You hear that, Bubbles? If you're listening, get yourself together and go and take him up on that. So, all right, guys. Thank you.
All right, much love. Take care of yourself.
Bye. Good night, guys. Well, that was so much fun. For me, that was just like sitting around the table and connecting up with two really good friends, which on occasion does happen when we are able to do so. We all have pretty crazy schedule, but we have unfortunately come to the end of another really terrific segment, and it would have been that much more terrific if Amelia would have been with us. So it just feels like, remember, the family's not here. But huge thank you to everybody who participated in the chat room tonight. It was a lot of our regulars and a lot of new people, and we thank you. It's been a pleasure meeting all of you. Huge thank you to Utu and Kat. Just always so much fun getting together with them, even if it is just on the screen. And I really didn't mind sharing them all with you. Big thank you to Folgers Coffee for sponsoring us and being responsible for why we're here and sharing in our journey. Huge thank you to Justin Snicker for the intro and the outro. Please remember, guys, go stop by all of our Facebook pages and our YouTube pages. You want to go to United Public Radio, you want to go to International Public Radio, you want to go to UFO Gods and Extraterrestrials, please subscribe and please find us on the Outer Realm on Facebook and give us a like. You just make it that much more special. And Amelia really does keep it up with some interesting stuff. And we always love to see the interaction. If you'd like to communicate with us directly, the only place that I will reply to is the outer realm contact at gmail.com. The outer realm contact at gmail.com. I just belong to too many pages. I get too many notifications. This just keeps it simple. So next week, we have a very special thing. I won't get into Wednesday because that's still kind of up in the air for us right now. So it's going to be like a big old surprise. But Thursday evening, we're really pleased to announce that it's going to be our 200th episode. Yay! 200 episodes. My gosh. So Amelia and I decided that we would do another Q&A so we could spend it interacting with you guys in chat, because we don't often get to do that a whole lot when we are, having guests on, because we're attentive to our guests. It's more about them. But Q&A nights is all about you guys and some of the things you guys have to say and questions you have to ask. So I'm really hoping that we'll have another great evening. Now, for Saturday, do not forget the Gray Zone Uncensored with myself and my friend and producer, Joe Montaldo, which is 5 to 7 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern. And it's always interesting topics. It's not like this. We don't have guests. It's full on information. And we do interact with everybody in chat who has questions and comments. So please find us there. And thank you again, Stephanie. Very kind words. Thank you for hosting this. Lovely lady. Thank you. And thank you so much, Blanche and Joe. Who's 200? Yeah. Us guys right here. And Rachel, again, enjoyed listening this evening. Glad you brought up the underground bases in Lake Ontario. Yes, wait for those. Lake Erie's got them. I think all the Great Lakes have them. But for now, I must bid you all a wonderful good night, and we will see you all next week. So thank you. Behave.
You have been listening to The Outer Realm with Michelle DeRoche and Amelia Pisano, airing live every Wednesday and Thursday evening, 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 to 10 p.m. Central, on the United Public Radio Network, 105.3 FM in New Orleans.